This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
NFL Week 18 is always a bit of an odd duck when talking player props, because most props simply are not posted as of Friday, but also because you got to consider motivation, you have to consider contract incentives, and a whole lot of stuff, so it is a weird and wonky week for sure, but still, we're going to dive in and get you ready for Week 18 by breaking down Annie Nader's thoughts on this week, her top player props of the week. We'll talk about some props for the Vikings and the Lions game and more to get you ready for what should be a fun way to close out this NFL regular season. Welcome on into Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research. Joined here as mentioned by Annie Nader. You can find her on X at anader33. Check out her work at FanDuel Research, where she is a writer for us. Annie, we're on to NFL Week 18. Happy New Year to you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Jim. Made it to Week 18 in one piece, which is nice. I'm excited for the playoffs and also hoping for a bit of chaos this weekend. So
I just need it to be not too much chaos because I need my Bucks to be in the playoffs. I'm not a Bucks fan, I guess, but I'm a Baker fan. So, and as someone who wants to watch Baker Mayfield in the playoffs versus Michael Penix, I'm okay with chaos, but I can't have the level of chaos that forces me to watch more Falcons this year because I don't think I can actually handle that.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement there.
Okay.
I've wanted the Bucks to make it for a while. One of my favorite teams going still.
Yep.
But I wouldn't mind, seeing the Chiefs challenge the Broncos or somehow seeing the Ravens slip up. I don't know. These are all very long shot hypotheticals, but we'll see.
I did take the Chiefs plus 10.5, so I agree with you. I hope we see, I don't know if vintage Carson Wentz is a good thing. So I hope we see competent Carson Wentz. I don't know if that's vintage or not, but let's go with competent Carson Wentz on that game on Sunday. And we can at least get some pushback there. I don't need him to win. Just cover the 10.5, man. That's all we need to get some fun. That's chaos I can root for, Andy. So I appreciate that level of endorsement for this week. We're going to dive in and talk about how we play things philosophically for NFL Week 18, because it is a bit of a weird week where you've got so many things to consider. Then we'll dive in to the Vikings-Lions game specifically and see where Annie is seeing value there. Then we'll dive in to yardage and touchdown props of those that are posted and Annie's favorite same-game parlay for Week 18. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. We'll still be with you throughout the playoffs as well. We're talking about all of the NFL wildcard games on Monday. I'll be going live at noon Eastern on Monday, breaking down my thoughts on all of the wildcard games, talking through my model, spread, and total predictions. That'll be live noon Eastern on Monday for the thoughts on that. Going to talk about the college football semifinals on Tuesday as well. So a lot of good stuff here still on the feed, despite the fact the regular season is concluding this week. So search for Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe. And if you like what you hear, give us a 5-star rating and review as well. And of course, all these shows do stream live on our brand new YouTube page. DFS show coming up later on today, noon Eastern, breaking down our thoughts NFL Week 18 at DFS with myself and Brandon Gadula. Enable notifications and subscribe to the YouTube page to get notified as we go live each and every day. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. This way, you'll be all set for the biggest games of the year. Make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C. First online real money wager, only $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/Shannon, Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, Annie, a bunch of games on the schedule this week where there's nothing on the line. And luckily, we don't have a lot of props in those, so we don't have to decide too much there, but they'll probably be up eventually. So what's your overall betting philosophy for player props in games or on teams with nothing on the line for this week?
Yeah, so I'm not going to try to force anything in week 18. We have a good reason to bet fewer props than we maybe normally would in a given week of the NFL season. In a normal week, we're following a process when it comes to betting props. And a big part of that process is not only knowing who's playing, but what their role is going to look like, what the opposing defense is going to look like. But when quarterbacks are sitting and key defensive players are sitting, a lot of that kind of goes out the window, and it becomes a little more difficult to gauge what's going to happen on both sides of the ball. But at the same time, because of all that volatility, it does open the door for more market inefficiencies than normal. And that's something we might want to try to take advantage of later this weekend when more of those props get posted. So, like the Chiefs, Eagles, Bills, Rams, like these teams we know they're not playing their quarterback. So for that reason, I'm probably going to stay off receiving props for those teams just because I don't really know who's getting the ball. But then I'm not totally opposed to checking out, passing props for those backup QBs. And I'm probably even more interested than looking at rushing props for backups in the backfield, since that's a tad more set in stone than target volume. We have Blake Corum, for example, expected to have a big workload this week. His rushing prop isn't up yet, but that's a spot where I'll see where it's at. Maybe I'll want to go to the alt markets too if I think it's set too low. There's a lot of backups in those situations where I'm just at least going to check it out and probably consider the alt markets if I like the numbers on them.
Yeah, I think that Corum specifically is a good shout because they're probably going to have Matthew Stafford, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp inactive. You can't have that many guys inactive, which implies to me they're probably going to have their offensive line for the most part intact. And they've been banged up all year, so it kind of makes sense that they want the cohesion, want to gel up front. If you get a backup running back behind a respectable offensive line, that's a lot different scenario than a backup running back behind a backup offensive line. So I think the Rams specifically are a good call out. Like last year in week 18, they had nothing on the line. Carson Wentz went kind of nuts. He played really well in that game. He ran a ton. So like Carson Wentz rushing props also, I think, in play for this week for the Chiefs, if those do eventually go up. So I think playing on a case-by-case basis, considering what the offensive line scenarios look like. And I think for the Rams, again, that's one spot where I actually do feel pretty okay about that. Jimmy Garoppolo is what he is, but he's also like better than some. He's not Spencer Rattler, at least. So I think that there are situations that are still good enough to attack if you know where the ball will go. I think there are actually some spots where that is the case, but as a general idea, it's never a bad idea to scale back for sure for a given week.
Yeah.
May not have to scale back too much though for the Lions and the Vikings. Let's talk about that game as the Sunday night hammer right now on FanDuel Sportsbook. The Lions favored by 2.5, and the total of this game is 56.5. We do have a full complement of props up for this game, Annie. So when you look at the Lions versus the Vikings, which props stand out to you on Sunday?
Yeah, let's start with checking out Jahmyr Gibbs' rushing and receiving prop. It's at 124.5 right now, which is a super high number, but I think it's well-deserved. If we look at his games without David Montgomery, went for 154 scrimmage yards in week 16 and followed that up with 163 yards in week 17. So Gibbs sailed well past this number in both games without Montgomery, and that was all while just playing around 60% of the snaps across that span. Given what's at stake in this game, not only home field advantage in the 1 seed, but a bye coming up if you win, I'm expecting him to have a larger snap rate this time out. The Lions have a chance to rest their starters for a week, so there's no reason for Gibbs to take his foot off the gas now. And an unleashed Gibbs at home, indoors, in a game with this high of a total, in a game with this close of a spread, I think it'll look pretty good. He's averaging 5.6 yards per carry. He's averaging 5.5 targets in his last 4 games. Back in week 7, he lit up Minnesota for 160 yards, despite David Montgomery playing 36% of the snaps in this one. So while this is a very big number, I feel pretty good going there.
Yeah, I was annoyed, frankly, on Monday because I had the under on Gibbs rushing yards. And I kept seeing Jamar Jefferson, kept seeing Craig Reynolds mix in. I was like, okay, awesome. This is the exact thesis of the play where they're going to scale him back, rest him a little bit for this Sunday night game against the Vikings. And because he's so freaking good, he still went like 20 yards, 23 yards over that mark of what I had him at 94.5. And I'm like, God dang it. Like, how does he do this? How does he do this to me? A 52% snap rate, and he still clears this mark so easily because he's just so electric. And honestly, he might play every snap on Sunday, kind of like you said. And so, like, yeah, 124.5 is high, but like it makes sense. And I think that honestly, you could look at his alt markets too for the rushing plus receiving yards, kind of see what we got here. 125 plus is minus 115. He's plus 190 for $1.50 and plus 430 for 175. Like, I don't think those are outrageous to at least consider, right?
Definitely not. I mean, plus 430. I don't know. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's been right there his last 2 games. And as we talked about, like that, and the snap rate was pretty low. And in one, I think it was around 68, but yeah, last week around 52. It's like, if he's playing 80% of the snaps, who knows what could happen?
Gotta help earn back the money that I lost from him last week. That's a terrible idea. Do not do that. But hey, it does help. I can root for Jahmyr Gibbs opposed to rooting against him, which I'm always in favor for sure. So Annie is on Jahmyr Gibbs over 124.5 rushing plus receiving yards. That is currently sitting at minus 115 at FanDuel Sportsbook. I hope that game lives up to the hype because we need that across this week 18 slate. As mentioned, Andy, not a lot of other props posted for week 18. So across the areas where props are up, which other yardage props stood out to you for this week?
Yeah, in this Bengals-Steelers game, which I believe is the only other prop market up right now. But we have Jaylen Warren rushing and receiving, another one of these.
Okay.
And set at 65.5 right now, I believe. Which, yeah, that's a pretty good number. Since their week 9 bye, he's gone over this in 5 out of 8 games. But he's gone for at least 64 total yards in 7 of those 8 games. So he's been right there in all but one of them. And he's coming off a 112-yard game. Before that week, went for 92 yards. And the important thing here is that he's outsnapped Najee Harris in 4 straight games. And in that 4-game span, he's also seen a 17% target share. So everything's kind of colliding at the perfect time for this matchup against the Bengals, who come in with a 26th ranked schedule-adjusted rush defense. It's definitely not a bad matchup for him. Obviously, the total's high, probably maybe a little too high. Spread is close, but this is a game where, back and forth, Warren's been playing a lot. He's been clearing this number or been right around this number in 7 of his last 8 games. So I think it's a good spot for him. And the Steelers, I mean, this game, even if the Ravens win earlier, this is a huge game for them. I mean, they have the chance to play the Texans versus playing a much tougher competition. So I like Warren in the spot.
Yeah, I think that the key thing for him is you look back to that Christmas Day game against the Chiefs. Obviously a big game for the Steelers. If they win that game, they can still win, have a better shot at the AFC North. And in that game, at least for the first 3.5 quarters before garbage time, it was all Jaylen Warren. Najee Harris did get some work on the final drive there, but that was when the game was over. They were just playing for the cover effectively, or playing to get the over, which they did not get, which I was sad about. But that was all Najee Harris there. Before then, when it was a neutral script and the game was in reach, Jaylen Warren got a ton of work. And like you said, that's not a one-game blip. He's been out snapping Harris pretty often recently, and he's a dynamic player. He's got some burst, and they don't have a lot of dudes with burst beyond George Pickens. So I feel like he kind of fits what they need within this offense. So I'm on board with you where I agree we can buy into what Warren has done, because I don't think it's super fluky that he was more heavily utilized in that game.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he got like 55 receiving yards when he played Cincinnati earlier this season. Add in the more rushing volume since that time, and I think this is just a little too low.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And this defense is one we can exploit for sure. So Annie is on Jaylen Warren over 65.5 rushing plus receiving yards and minus 114. What about touchdown bets? What are you seeing there, Annie?
Yeah, let's go back to this Vikings-Lions game. Lot to like in this one. And I like Jordan Addison. I think it's at plus 110 right now, which for how high this total is, I mean, it's a preposterous total. It's a pretty good number for me. Let's see. Yeah, it's still plus 110. I mean, Addison, since week 11, he's seeing a 26% target share, 35% air yard share, 33% red zone target share, and 44% end zone target share. Overall, those are even better market shares than Justin Jefferson. The Lions, on top of that, the Lions defense is super banged up. Their secondary is very banged up. Also, the Vikings are to keep up in this game, they're going to have to win it through the air. There's no world in which, we're just having Aaron Jones steam through everyone
right.
The way I'm hoping this goes is that Gibbs is all over the place. The Lions have a lead, and Sam Darnold has to fight back in the air. And if he's fighting back in the air, that's through Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. So to get this at plus money, in this kind of matchup indoors with everything considered in the environment, I'm pretty good with that.
And like you said, the role for Addison has just been like really good. It's not just like the overall role, but like the high leverage work has definitely been there. If you look at the games for them since TJ Hawkinson returned, Addison a 37% deep target share and 29% inside the red zone. Those are like tremendous numbers. And like you said, defense is banged up. Darnold efficient through the air in the first game against the Lions. They had some low volume because they had a defensive return for a touchdown and stuff like that. They had a lead, so they did run a bit more in that one as well. But like Darnold was efficient. It's a defense that has lost a lot more key guys since then as well. And Addison's role is just really, really good. So I like the overall thought with like the Addison touchdown prop, but I also like the thought process of how that plays well with the Gibbs rushing plus receiving prop as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, we're going to talk about a same game parlay and how those things correlate together.
Oh,
so.
Well, let's let it rip then. So I'm assuming Addison touchdown is in there, plus 110. What else we add into the same game parlay this week?
We're going to add Gibbs rushing and receiving. And then I'm going to do something I don't normally do, which is have 3 players involved in a same game parlay. Ooh. I think for obvious reasons, I don't like to do it. I don't want to have to be attached to 3 different players. And also there's competing if you're picking 2 people on the same team. But I really like Justin Jefferson over 28.5 yards, longest reception.
Okay. And
he's cleared this number in 50% of games this season, which is a lower rate than what these odds are implying, but he's logged a 27-yard reception in 75% of his games, which is obviously a much more appealing clip. And I feel okay mentioning that 75% hit rate, even though it's a yard or 2 below where we need him to be this weekend, because the Lions have such major injuries on defense. Carlton Davis is out. Their secondary is super banged up. They've let up the second most 20-plus yard catches in the league heading into Week 18. And on top of that, all the things we mentioned, high total, close spread, indoors, Vikings are underdogs. So I like Jefferson to make a big play this weekend. And I like how we're asking Addison to score a touchdown and Jefferson to make a big play, but those things are exactly what the Vikings are going to need to be looking for if we're assuming that Gibbs is going to be all over the place and that the Lions will be holding on to a lead.
Well, I also don't mind it because like those two combined for 51% of the targets on this team, since Hawkinson returned, and that's a massive number. They're getting all the high leverage work, which is what you need. If you want a long reception, you want a touchdown, you want deep targets and red zone targets, they combine for 70% of the deep targets, and they combine for, I'm pulling up my sheet, 55.4% of the red zone targets in that time too. So like if they throw, it's going to those guys. Like, yeah, I was tilting on Sunday about Jalen Naylor getting touchdowns and stuff like that. But like, even if you look at the final stat sheet in that game, it was again through Addison and Jefferson there. So I agree with your overall philosophy of where like, yeah, I don't want to have 3 players competing with each other for looks in the same game. But I think in this specific scenario where it's 3 players who get tremendous usage and they are the clear focal points of their offense, I think that does make it pretty easy to pout.
Yeah, as someone who didn't have Addison and Jefferson both in my lineup, I just had Jefferson. What was that, like 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, great, he's having such a good game. And then, so we know they can both burst in the same game. We've learned that.
Get a replay of the Falcons game here, why not? Run it back with those 2 guys here. So Annie is on. Jordan Addison in-10 touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs over 124.5 rushing plus receiving yards. And Justin Jefferson's longest reception over 28.5 yards. That combined plus 557 at FanDuel Sportsbook for that Lions and Vikings game. That is all we have here for today on Covering the Spread. Big thank you once again to Annie Nader for joining us, breaking down our thoughts on NFL Week 18. Annie, enjoy the Vikings and Lions. Enjoy the entirety of NFL Week 18. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll talk to you once again talk to you once again soon.
Thanks, Jim.
You can find Andy on X at anader33. I am on X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Back with you on the YouTube page again, noon Eastern today, breaking down thoughts on NFL DFS. Turn on notifications there to get notified as we go live there, but also subscribe to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work in the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.